Yeah, all good. So welcome to the final conversation of day one. I think some of you are here for both days, which will be great, but some of you, this will be your last session. So we're going to make it a fantastic session. No pressure to the speakers. This has to be the best session of the entire day so far. And as I mentioned, we are going to be talking about a topic that has come up throughout a lot of the conversations that we've had today. So how to get government really focused on that mission delivery. What difference does it make having these missions? How are we going to be working differently? And we're going to be learning from some people that have been involved in kind of mission-led approaches to see if we can learn from what's worked well, maybe where some of the challenges have been. I am going to keep that same format for the rest of this session. So please, after I've introduced our speakers, and I will ask them a couple of questions, but then we will keep going until 5 o'clock and it will be all over to you. So as many questions as you can get in before 5 o'clock will be fantastic. And if this is your last day, if you're only here for today, please don't leave thinking, I should have asked that question and I didn't ask that question. Now is the opportunity to ask that question. So we do really have a stellar panel with us here for the final session of today. We've got Jonathan Mills, who is Director General for Energy Markets and Supply at the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero here in the UK. Lots of work on the missions already going on there. I'm delighted because she's a real friend of Global Government Forum and has done many of our events already. So we've got Didi Esther Walton-Jack, who is Head of the Civil Service of the Federation in Nigeria. Then Phil, again, who has been involved in our events before. So we've got Phil Bland, who is Global Government Advisor for Qualtrics. And then last but by no means least, we've got Jackie Rock, who is CEO Advisor for Health Holding Company's Saudi Arabian government. I think you are here for. So, but you have a very interesting background, Jackie, so we'll get into that in a short while. So I think my question then, and Jackie, when I come to you, you can tell us a little bit about yourself as well in front of before you begin. But my first question to Jonathan, we're going to kind of dive straight in, is how are the government's 5 missions already playing out at the departmental level? So what difference is the approach making in practice in the way people work, the priorities they set? What are you seeing in your department?
Thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? Good.
Good.
Lovely to be here. It's particularly lovely to be talking through this microphone. I've set myself up for the evening, and I sent my teenage daughter a picture of me with this microphone on, so I expect to be ridiculed when I get home. But look, your question was about mission-focused government in this country, and as you say, in energy we have one of the 5 missions, the Clean Energy Superpower mission. I'm the senior responsible owner for that, so the senior official with responsibility for looking at that across government, and I think. It's a really exciting dimension to the way that we're working. The way that I look at it is really, I think we take a lot from the experience we've had over the last few years of doing something very different, which is responding to crises. I was in the Department for Work and Pensions through the COVID crisis. The experience that I had there, lots of people in this room, I'm sure, in different jobs, different governments, different bits of civil society will have had these experiences, was one of massive pulling together across not just all parts of government, but all sectors, public, private, civil society, real focus on a shared goal and an ability to raise our game to do things, to innovate in a way that we would have thought impossible beforehand. And for me, one of the things that I think we're trying to do with the mission framework is to apply that mentality to long-term challenges for the country. So in the case of energy, that's about getting ourselves off our dependency on fossil fuels, building ourselves an infrastructure for the future that enables us to have the benefits of a cleaner energy system, but the other missions around growth, around the NHS, around opportunity, and around safer streets all have those different fundamental challenges. I think what we're all trying to do is take some of what we know we can do in a crisis situation and apply that to things that might not be as urgent but are no less important.
Thanks, John. And that really builds on what Christina was just saying then about how sometimes we're better during a crisis, but maybe having the missions is going to mean we keep that performance because we have those shared objectives that we're all aiming towards. Thank you so much. And Didi, I'm going to come over to you. Just a sense, because some people might not know, does the Nigerian government have a mission-led approach as well?
Okay, thank you, Sabam. Nigeria government does have a mission-led approach. And the approach is being handled or being delivered by the Federal Civil Service. And so being my 7th month in that role with a country of over 300 million people, I tell you, I have my job cut out for me. And so we have 6 missions in our strategy document, and the missions are such that we have intentionally begun to accelerate them because the strategy document ends this year, 2025. What are those missions? The first is that we want to accelerate capability building and talent management. And this means we have to train 64,000 civil servants using structured programs. And these programs, of course, are such that we have to use so many different methods. We have an e-learning platform. We have an onboarding program, a leadership program. We're looking also to build 500 future leaders for the civil service. We also are out on a mission to improve the performance management system. And of course, that means clear KPIs, targets, and goals. And we're trying to onboard 42 ministries, departments, and agencies with an automated performance management system. Another mission we have is to improve the information payroll and personnel management system, and this would help in transparency of all HR administration. Another very critical mission we have, of course, is to improve, accelerate our innovation. Well, we're all here at the Innovation Summit, and so now you know why I'm here. And we are doing this by annual challenge competitions, and we seek to deploy at least 10 innovations in the Federal Civil Service. What we do also, another mission, is that we are working on accelerating our digitalization. Now, the Federal Civil Service is trying to digitize her paperwork and automate her workflows. And so it is a mission to get the 42 ministries, departments, and agencies on enterprise content management systems. And finally, we have to enhance the value proposition of our civil servants. And so this means that we are working on improving housing by building 500 houses every year for civil servants. We want to enhance our rewards and recognition system and improve our group life insurance. All these, we believe, are missions that are doable, but maybe later we'll talk about the strategies we need to use to fast-track their implementation.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dee. So you've given us a real overview of kind of your objectives for reform of the civil service and the public sector and how you're using that mission-led approach to drive forward your strategy there. Interesting what you said about having the innovation awards. So we have something similar in the UK. We have the data challenge and try and take the top kind of 3 projects from the data challenge forward. So we can maybe do a compare and contrast on that. Phil, over to you. So you work and have worked with numerous public sector bodies, but you've also worked in different countries, in different sectors. Where, in your experience, have you seen a mission-led approach being really successful?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I've had the pleasure of doing it both sides, which is great. So my career in public service actually started, my biggest role started on a dare, which was, if you take this role, it will be the greatest success of your career or the most catastrophic failure in government. It's up to you. But that agency that I worked for in Australia, we had a very clear top-down culture of leadership that were on that mission. So everyone was willing to stand up and do it. And Kat Little summed it up today, and Christine mentioned it last night. Public servants serve, so mission is a necessary North Star for government. If you have people who join to serve, you need to have a clear mission that those people serve to. So now I get the pleasure of working across the world, and I get to ask the harder questions to leaders, which are, if you have a mission, how do you ensure it's transparent? How do you iterate it or measure it? Because it's not a static thing. If I look at the mission from my time in government in 2019 to what it looked like by 2022, it was completely different. We could never have expected the sheer acceptance of digital adoption that we saw. That came with unnecessary consequences, though. That came with things we didn't see, like digital exclusion on the rise. So suddenly we had to shift our mandate really quickly. I had the pleasure of Singapore government had a great example of, they've built an entire agency, Service Singapore, because the rise of GovTech led to a secondary problem, which is that second mission of government's inclusivity. So you have to bring other people in, you have to think about the broader community. So a lot of the work I do now, especially with global leaders, is where we partner with them are, do you have the stories to tell? Do people know what their careers mean to them in government? We've heard it a lot today on talent acquisition is difficult in government. Talent attrition is really hard because successful people get poached. I'm probably not the best example because I did that. But the ability to bring people in, and I'll never forget, we were bringing in product teams into government. And rather than compete, the government I worked for had Atlassian 3 blocks around the corner, like 3 blocks away. So it's a pretty hard proposition to a product person to work for government or Atlassian, the coolest tech company in the world at the time. But we changed the value proposition on that mission to, do you want to see your work in front of 5 million people? Do you want to walk away feeling accomplished? If you want to grow your career, come to us. We know that you'll probably leave in 5 years, but you'll know that you've made a difference and you'll have a CV that backs it up. And I think they're the key things on mission-driven government that are so critical. And also, it has to be bottom-up. A lot of times I see missions come from the top down, and even the workforce haven't had a say in it. So they're following leadership, but they don't feel like they're listened to. So we do a lot of work on actually getting those stories and bringing them up and democratizing that insight.
I mean, that would be really interesting. Maybe the audience wants to come back on that, because obviously we have a government that came in with the 5 missions. So the extent to which people feel like they're co-owners of those 5 missions will be quite interesting to explore. But yeah, lots of issues there. And I like I'm going to come back to how do you iterate a mission as well. I think that's really interesting as well. Jackie, over to you. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and then also about Saudi Arabia and their approach to missions?
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure being back here, just in London for a couple of weeks, and lots of familiar faces, because up until the 31st of December this year, I was the Chief Commercial Officer at NHS England. So I'm home, and home to a certain extent. So yeah, just really quickly, my career, I spent 30 years in investment banking. So I'm a finance person. I joined the government about 8 years ago, Chief Commercial Officer in Defence. Then obviously, like lots of us, part of the COVID pandemic. That was my kind of first foray into health. And then I took on the role, as I say, of the Chief Commercial Officer for NHS England. And I'm staying in healthcare. And I've gone over to work for the Saudi Ministry of Health and the Saudi government, because the missions and the transformation that is happening there, not just in healthcare, but across the entire country, is phenomenal. I honestly think it's probably one of the most exciting places and the biggest transformations that are going on globally at the moment. And just a little bit about Saudi. So it's a very, very unique country where you think about where it's placed. It's in between 3 continents. It's kind of the beating heart of the Arab and the Islamic world. It's got a very, very young population. It's very, very rich in cultural and history, and of course, its main product has been oil. Well, everybody, all countries, especially in the Middle East, are the diversification from oil. What else do we become? As the world uses different products, different energy, we need to think about, Saudi Arabia needs to think about what it's going to do. So we launched about 7 years ago, it was, the mission Vision 2030. The Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, is hosting that. And it is one of the biggest mission-led transformations, government transformations, that there's ever been. I'm not going to go down into detail about all the different pillars, but it cuts right across the entire ecosystem of the government. And you would, one of the things I want to bring out about it, you would have heard of it, right? So whether you know particularly what's going on in Saudi, you've probably watched the boxing that's going off, the fact that we've got a new Formula One track at Qadiyah. So tourism, we're building thousands of new resorts along the Red Sea. We've got NEOM. Most people have heard of NEOM now. It's the world's biggest giga projects. This is all part of our transformation. And of course, what I've come to Saudi to do is to lead the healthcare transformation, which is very similar to what we were doing and what we're continuing to do in DHSC and the NHS. It's global health, and again, I'm happy to go into more detail on that. But I think the key thing about Saudi's transformation is that it's brought the people with it. It really, as everybody, every citizen that I speak to knows exactly what's going on. They're part of it. They're very fiercely proud of it, the Saudis as a nation. And they want the whole world to know. And I think that's why it feels a bit different, because a lot of governments will do their government transformation. They get a little bit sort of, inward looking. Saudi Arabia's done the opposite. You'll see it on the TV. You'll see it's just everywhere. They're being they want the world to watch them. They know that therefore, that exposes you to the world. But they've been really, really deliberate in how they've brought the nation with them.
Thanks, Jackie. I'm really interested. I mean, we've heard about how a crisis can kind of bring people together. In a way, that having to move away from oil is the crisis moment for Saudi. They have to kind of pivot to a new vision, and that might be what's kind of bringing everybody together in this transformation. Again, I'm going to come to the audience in a moment, but I've just got a couple of questions that I'm going to put to our panelists here. So, I mean, we do have this is probably the most international panel that we've had the whole day that we've been here. And I just wonder whether when it comes to missions, are we learning enough from each other? Like, have you ever spoken before today? How can we make sure that we share good practice, and with our limited resources, that we don't make mistakes that are unnecessary because we're learning from each other? So, Jonathan, I'll come to you again. How good are we at learning from each other internationally?
I mean, we can definitely be better.
Can you hear, is that microphone gone? I think we might need the handheld up here. Thank you, it's coming. That was your daughter, she was listening to you. Thanks so much.
That any better? Doesn't look as cool.
Yeah, there we go.
So I was saying, I mean, I would be, I think it would be massively complacent to say that we were doing enough on this, or that we were getting the full benefit of this. I know in the world that the mission that I know most about around clean energy, around climate, that is profoundly international. There's a huge amount of international collaboration around research, around technology, around policy frameworks. We know that some of the things we've done in this country, like the Climate Change Act, our legal framework for reducing our carbon emissions, have had an impact around the world. Equally, lots of the technologies that we're deploying here now. If anyone who's got a taxi here today, you may well have been in an electric car, which there are lots of in London at the moment. That is a technology that is developing all around the world. So there's a lot of that, but there is much more that we can do. And I think, actually, going back to the theme of the experience of the crises we've worked on over the last few years, whether it's COVID or the energy crisis, that really brought home how linked the international and the domestic are here. So I think it's a really fruitful thing for us to be doing more on in the future.
Thanks. And Didi, similarly to you, I mean, you're very keen, you're very active in going to these kind of things. Do you think there's more countries could be doing?
Yes, I'd like to start by saying this may be an opportunity for me to say thank you to the UK Civil Service because we are actually collaborating with them right now. In fact, Sabam, it was in 2022, I attended the UK Civil Service live.
Yep.
And I was enthralled. And last year, I had the opportunity to come back as head of the Civil Service to begin discussions, collaboration with the Cabinet Secretary. And as we speak now, we're actually working with the UK Civil Service to have our own Civil Service conference in June of this year. So I think that's a very good collaboration.
Fantastic.
And we're also collaborating with so many development partners and international agencies. So, for instance, the United Nations is supporting us on our digitalization efforts in conjunction with the United Arab Emirates. Just as we are keen on learning, we are also keen to share. And so if you recall, at the last Global Government Summit in Singapore, we did share about our Service-Wise GPT, an AI tool which we developed to grant access to information on the Federal Civil Service of Nigeria. So we are open to more collaboration and to more networking, and we believe that that way we'll leverage so much on technology and information from other countries and other organizations.
Fantastic. And maybe some of our audience here would like to come to the conference in Nigeria in June.
You're all invited.
We will share that details with everybody. Thanks. And I guess to Phil and Jackie, I mean, you're both very global and you've moved around. So you must have seen, in some ways, your examples of doing this. You're taking kind of learning from one country to another. But do you get frustrated sometimes by seeing the same things being done in silos around the world?
Yeah, I'm going to add an odd quote here, but a bit controversial. I think this community is better than it thinks, but worse than it knows. And what I mean by that is, I think there is a lot of information exchange. And I'm very fortunate now I get to sit outside of government and see it. So I can probably say things I couldn't have said in government in those relationships. But I think one of the challenges often too is how we learn from each other's context. And context against mission is really critical. So for example, we'll set back, we're on a mission to be the next GDS, the next Estonia. And that's great. And then you go and talk to Estonia and everyone gets excited. And then the next day you go back to work and everyone's depressed by 2 days in because the context of the environment you work in, the hierarchies you work in, and also, your senior leaders aren't on that same journey as you. So how do you inspire them to see that this is the next great advance that we want to take? So I think around the world, we see a lot of it. I'm in a role now where I get asked all the time about what are you doing in Australia? What are you doing in Canada? What are you doing in the US? And I think one of my replies to that is always, everyone's doing a little bit of what you can take in context, but not in its entirety. So there's a really big advantage in these groups and these coming together because you can take a bit from everyone and then fit that to your environment. If you're trying to replicate something in its entirety, you're always going to be bound in frustration. I'm not picking on GDS, but even GDS, there's things as an Australian I find really odd because I'm used to a different context, but we also have states. So states can run much faster than federal government and then force federal government to catch up. It's a different relationship here. So I think that's really key is take the bits you can use, have empathy for the bits your partners can't do, and then talk about it and find the paths forward.
Thanks, Phil. And then finally, I'm going to ask Jackie, and then I'm going to come over to the audience. Jackie.
Yeah, and I think, just to build on that a little bit, in terms of the bits you can use and the bits you can't, I mean, Saudi Arabia is run very differently than the UK, right? In terms of how our governments are elected, how, who the decision makers are. But actually, you said, is it frustrating? I'm actually delighted when I realise that the missions are the same. because especially in healthcare, the key missions, we want to move patients from being treated in hospital to hospital at home. We want to start looking at prevention rather than treating sickness. It's exactly the same. And then you kind of get that, okay, well, we're all on the right path now. I think I just want to finish on this in terms of it's people. Right? It's people like me and the rest of the panel going out there. Even when I was in my job in defence and when I was in my job in the NHS, I was always really, really deliberate about reaching out to other countries, about ensuring that I would do, if there was a particular event I could go to, or if there was particular white papers that a country had done. So I would encourage everyone to be really curious, because no matter which area you're in and what you're embarking on, especially now we've got AI and it can write a lovely report for us. There'll be someone else that's either done it, doing it, or and so I was always hungry for that. I was hungry, I was curious, I'd be constantly going out. So I just encourage people to do that, because it is about people. And it is about people. Everyone in this room can reach out to me on something in Saudi Arabia. And I know other people like me in the US and all over the world. So it really is a small place, right? And we are all very connected.
It's like we planned that seamlessly, because one of our first keynotes this morning, one of the takeaways was be curious.
Okay.
And you just said be curious. It's kind of a nice top and tail, I think, to this day. Okay, coming over to the audience, who would like to have the first question? Yes, we have a gentleman back there. I'm conscious, sorry, we've got one of your microphones, so I know. If you could keep your hand up, if I say yes, then, yeah, thank you. So the guy in the blue shirt there with his sleeve rolled up. And then I see we have another gentleman here and another hand there. And then I will come over to this side of the room. So we've got 3 questions lined up. If you keep your hands up, once that speaker has asked their question, we'll get the microphone over here. Thanks.
Hello, thank you. So I think this is going to be primarily for Jonathan. Apologies for your mic. But with the government's mission of becoming a clean energy superpower and taking that into context of today's event, surely using innovation via AI, even though it might not be anathema to the cause, it's surely a little contentious in that if we're pushing for more AI usage, we're going to be pushing for more computing, which requires more energy, putting more burden on being net zero. Is there any sort of way that you've kind of thought to combat this, to work out whatever problems might come up from there?
Thanks, Jonathan. So that question to you, does using AI create environmental issues?
Yeah, so really good question. We have been looking quite a lot at the electricity demands that would follow from increased AI, particularly increased data center presence in the UK. And you're right, I mean, some of these data centers are very, very large power users. The good news is we're going to have to build a system that can enable more electricity to be on the grid, whatever. We know we're going to need that to support electric vehicles. We know we're going to need that to support a move away from gas heating to electric heating. So it's all part of the same challenge. And I think you need to see both sides of the ledger. So there are huge opportunities I think we're only really starting to get to the edge of on how you can use AI to enable the system to work better, whether that's working out ways of managing the grid better so that demand and supply are balanced, whether it's developing new materials and new technologies that can enable in engineering to proceed faster, or whether it's about the way that we're helping people to be informed and make decisions as customers themselves. So absolutely, as you know, we're always going to have to adapt our strategy and to build in new technologies. But by doing that, the technology itself can unleash another wave of innovation. So I'm really optimistic about that.
Thanks. Okay, we've got 2 questions here. Gentleman over there.
Hi. So my question is more about the structures of the civil service to be able to support what we're trying to do with mission. So I'm really enthused about missions. I think we should be working those collectively. But the structures of government at the moment were set up for a completely different environment, a different time, in a different world. And I'm concerned that if we don't do anything about those structures, we're not going to be able to deliver the missions that are what we've been setting out to do. And I think when you then add on AI, you add on innovation, you add on digitization to all of those things, fundamentally, we still need to change the structures of government to make those happen. And I just wondered what the panel's views were on whether we're being radical enough in the structure change.
Thanks. I like this. So missions essentially are horizontal and our structures are still vertical. Do we need to change our structures? Phil and then Didi, I'll come to you.
So I'll answer it safely because I can. I think there's two parts to that. One is it can't change unless the political divide between the executive office of government and the elected office come closer together. I think that's one key thing. And where we're seeing governments really do this well, the elected branch of government have gotten closer to the executive branch with transparency. And I think one of the other things is, what's the insurmountable evidence to force that rethinking of that structure and that change? Transparency of data is a really key part of that, because there's too many ways, if there's too much hierarchy or in traditional structures, to either push back on innovation because there's too many layers to put caution against driving change, or kind of hide failures. So unless you can see that, and there's some governments around the world that have really taken that mission on, then there's governments that have kind of hit their heads against a brick wall, because even kind of at the secretary level, the minister level, that desire for innovation's been there, and then it's hit the machine of government, you know, like a 10-pound force. I got asked a very similar question by someone very frustrated in NATO who said the same thing, which is, you know, there has to be a better way. One of the ways I saw it work firsthand, both in and out now, was seeing a political leader who talked about the long screwdriver, where the only way things were going to get better is if they were willing to put the time in to really dig in. Now, that was pretty scary at the time, and there's a whole philosophical debate around political overreach. But think about a steering committee on a $100 million project where the minister, surprise, dials in. Just drops in to listen to the steering committee. That steering committee changed its tone very, very quickly when they realised that that minister could drop into any steering committee across government that was in their remit. So suddenly you're forcing the culture to change, and you're asking those senior political leaders whether they actually want to be there or do they not want to be there for this type of government. And I think it's a really good point, because unless we get past that tradition in government, it is always going to be difficult.
Thanks. Didi, your missions, have you thought about changing your structures as well as the way that you work?
Okay, thank you, Sir Bam. So the civil service is the engine to deliver on the government's missions, or the government's national development goals. And so the missions that the civil service is carrying out is one that has to have everybody on board. So we are not changing the structures, but we are bringing on a one government approach. And so first of all, there's a lot of collaboration going on. First, in the executive arm of government at the federal level. So we have retreats for the president, the vice president, ministers, permanent secretaries, where we sit, we deliberate, we agree. And then I recently introduced what we call war rooms. Now, the war rooms are platforms for interagency collaboration. And so not only agencies, we have in the war room stakeholders, private partners, development partners, and these war rooms are able to deal with real-life situations, real-life problems in real time. So we have so many other strategies. Very recently, so I'm sure I shared with you, we had to collaborate with the subnational governments through the state civil services, because Nigeria has 36 states and a federal capital territory. So we are now bringing together everybody to deliver on the missions of government. And that collaboration extends to other governments within and other agencies, private sector, public sector. We are all working together with the one government approach. So I think it's not really about dismantling the structures, but it is rather bringing everybody together to put their hands on deck to deliver on the missions.
I mean, that is interesting, isn't it? Because whatever structures you create, there's always going to be boundaries somewhere and silos somewhere. So almost the different approach you've taken is within the structures you have, creating those spaces for collaboration, but also that shared vision you're saying between your ministers, your elected politicians, and the civil servants. Really interesting. Jackie, did you want to say anything quickly on this horizontal vertical? I know we've got other questions.
And again, you know, we don't really have elected as such. It's a different structure. But yeah, we've exactly, just exactly what we've heard here. We did change. We did change. You know, when you're going to deliver something at the size and the scale of the Vision 2030, we did look right across the public sector. Civil service, if you wish to call it that, and therefore made the right necessary changes. But we're a nation that could do that. It's easier for some nations than it is for others, and to say, okay, we run our government functions this way. Now we're going to run them this way. So I guess to a certain extent, we're blessed with having the flexibility to be able to do that. But it is a challenge. One I accept.
Thanks. Okay, we've got another question here, and then if you have a question over here, please put your hand up, and we will get the microphone over as well to this side of the room. But question over here.
Thanks. We talk about missions and what could enable them, but have we got any examples of what's been delivered by missions?
In the UK or anywhere?
Either. I know missions in the UK are fairly new,
Yeah.
but maybe an international example of this is what's actually been achieved by a mission rather than let's just talk about the process of getting there.
Okay, any examples of missions? Phil, you're nodding.
I can give a state level, but we had a mission in state government of 80% digital adoption. It was kind of the rage back in those late 2019, 18s. I think what we were able to do with a ruthless commitment to that was get 5 million active users onto our mobile app, where we outranked TikTok in downloads both on the Google Play Store and the Apple Play Store. But it was relentless, and it didn't come without risks. And I think that's a really good point you're making about showing the evidence of something being delivered. Now, within that delivery was a huge controversy about charging payment services fees for certain transactions that were built within that app. One of the challenges was, in a way, that was the only way we could get the foundational funding to modernize the app to deliver the capability that people wanted. So I think there are really good examples of some of those missions being delivered. I actually think the greatest one was the cheapest I ever saw, which was in New Zealand government, which was life journeys. So I've worked with a lot of governments who have talked about life journeys. Now, the challenge in life journeys, a lot of those programs end with just a content website. So you do all of that work, there's years and years of research, and then what lands is just a landing page with guidance on how to follow through a transition. New Zealand government was so intent on delivering an actual transactional application. They went to 4 universities, they took final year engineering students, they lobbied in other agencies and just said, we don't want any funding from you, we just want your permission to share data. And they basically sticky taped this thing together in the back end, but they built the Smart Start app, which means an expectant parent in New Zealand doesn't require a physical interaction with government, apart from hospital, till the age of 2 years old. So the child's birth is registered, they pick their specialist, choose a hospital, register for payments and benefits, all within one app with the click of consent. I think that's a good example of it. Can be done on any budget.
Brilliant, thank you, Phil. We've got this will probably be the final question here. I was just going to say, I think we did mention another mission that was delivered, I guess, was the production of vaccines during COVID. That was a successful mission, and the most famous mission of all is get a man on the moon, right? That was the first time I'd heard of mission delivery. But yes, here we go.
Yeah, hi. So we've got quite a lot of problems to solve, and we talk about mission statements, but how do you get citizens and other government departments, key stakeholders, local authorities, all trusting each other? Because we sort of come to these events and we all get carried away, and then we want to share data to make better informed decisions. But then when we get back to our daily jobs, then it's very difficult to data share and trust one another.
Thanks. This will be the final question because we're running out of time, and I'm going to ask all of you your thoughts on, because trust has been an issue that's come up a lot. So in terms of the mission context, how do we get all of these people involved in the mission to trust each other enough to share information with each other?
It's a great question. I don't think there's any shortcut to it either. I think you have to build that up over time. One of the things that I'm struck by, though, is how much appetite there is. So, sorry, excuse me. When I talk to energy companies who are wanting to build the infrastructure that we need, so wanting to build wind farms, for example, they absolutely want to be able to engage with the communities that are going to be affected by their building plans. They want to be able to explain why it is they're doing what they're doing. Obviously, it's partly about their bottom line, but they're doing it in service of a wider purpose as well. And one of the things that they find really powerful about being able to align what they're doing with a national mission is it enables them to explain to the citizens they're dealing with how what they're doing relates to a wider purpose. Similarly, when I talk to people working in local and devolved government, huge appetite to harness a lot of kind of local enthusiasm around climate and energy and put that into a national agenda. So there's a lot of enthusiasm there. I think you have to build the trust by what you do, not what you say. I think you just have to show that you've got consistency of purpose, that you're going to behave in a way that earns that trust over time. I think that is particularly important for central government because we're sort of in the position of most power. So I think we have to demonstrate that most strongly. I want to come back. It links a bit, I think, actually, to the point that people were talking about a minute ago about structures. I really strongly agree we should try and work out how we can get our structures better, but I even more strongly believe that the structures will never solve the problem. It's about how we behave. It's about how we empower people to solve problems. It's about the culture that we set. And that's the sort of the hard yards, but that's what really makes it work.
Thanks so much. Didi, trust and stakeholders.
Okay, so thank you. Well, our civil service is citizen-centered. And so one of the things we do is that we have regular citizens and stakeholders engagements. And so these engagements are usually a hybrid. So we have some people coming in person and others join virtually. The other thing we do is that we do a lot of publicity and media on government programs and activities. And we know that the citizens actually have the opportunity to give feedback. So there are feedback mechanisms to hear from the citizens on how these programs affect them. And these engagements are done, from ministry to ministry, so it cuts across all the sectors, and we are engaging regularly with the citizens and getting good feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Didi. So really putting focus on that citizen engagement. Yes. Phil, trust.
Yeah, I think one of the cornerstones is good data on human experiences. It's always hard to fight data, but we're very good. Government's very good at getting lots of operational data about people and transactional numbers and counts and large volumes. But actual stories of human beings at scale tend to break silos really well. We did some work with the US Navy where they were able to take the voice of their entire workforce into a congressional hearing on a mobile phone. And it wasn't about their attrition rates or other pieces, it was real stories of lived experiences of sailors in the US Navy. And I think sometimes those silos can come down if we humanize the data, but also your feedback's a great mechanism. It's consent driven by a citizen, it's consent driven by an employee. And whether or not we transmit that data to our other agencies and partners, that's data we can bring into discussion and share and talk about across our agencies to compare notes. So I think there is a capability there around understanding what's consented to, how do we talk about it more openly, how do we share it more openly, but also how do we deliver it back transparently. So if you're telling me, if you're telling me as a citizen how I feel government's working and not working for me, that's great, but where do I see that go as a citizen? Is it in someone's back office? Is it somewhere else? I think there's a really big opportunity to make some of that data more transparent, and some governments are doing that. But I think to break down silos, ultimately, I sound really commercial here, but in the commercial world, people would say customer is king. You know, citizen is king in government, and sometimes silos can be broken down if that data is irrefutable.
Thanks. And Jackie, the final words to you. So I think the question wasn't just about trust in the public either. It was also about all of the players that need to come together at different levels of government.
Indeed. And I think this is about why it's so important what the missions are, and they have to be sustainable missions regardless of the colour of government that is in. Because this can, my time in the civil service here, it's quite tiring when we're all really focused on a particular mission, and then we might have a general election, we might have a change, and it's kind of, right, we're not doing that anymore, we're doing this now, and we're doing that, and the constant, because of the way the UK, our UK democracy works, that can be quite exhausting. So it's really important to have sustainable missions that, regardless of who's in number 10, it's still something that is going to get delivered. And in times of crisis and things like that, they still, we all agree and we all think it's the right thing. But I think there's too much movement around that. And I think as civil servants, it's really imperative that, this is the mission. We're all going to stick to this. We're all going to work together on this. We all know what our accountability is as well. I think that's something around sort of trust on the different levels, the different layers. Make sure everybody knows what their part in delivering the mission is. And we keep saying, keep talking about it, should be, what we've just been done with the NHS, the public consultation on the mission to reform the NHS, phenomenal. We went out and we asked every single member of the UK public to give us their views. And every single answer that came back has been read. It'll all be part of the reforms when they get published. And that's the whole story of bringing everybody along with you. So, but just keep talking about it, because we all know how irritating it is. Well, we've got mission statements, we've got values, and we've got visions, and then we all sort of test each other. Do you know what they are? And we all go, oh, it's this, and it's because, or they might be on a poster in the coffee room. You've got to just make it part of our language, make it part of what we do. So that's why we all come to work. It's why we all work in governments, because we believe in the missions that the government delivers. It's just, that's my final word on that.
And that's a brilliant note for us to end on. That's why all of you are here, because you believe in the mission of public service and making the world a better place for everybody. Thank you so much, that panel. I said it had to be one of the best sessions of the day. It certainly was. So thank you so much. Oh, my voice has gone right at the end of the day. Please give a warm round of applause to our audience, our panel. And I know I am now standing between you and the reception, which is outside, but I also want to say a huge thanks to you, the audience, because you really have been brilliant today. You've brought energy and engagement to all of the sessions, and I hope you agree with me. I wasn't quite sure what the atmosphere might be in the conference today, because there are so many challenges, there are so many things that you're facing. But somebody said as I was going around, it feels a bit like a festival. So there's a real buzz in the room and lots of energy and lots of excitement, which is great. If you were only here today, I hope you enjoyed your day. I hope you did have fun, as well as learning lots of stuff. If you're coming back tomorrow, bring all that energy with you. And if you know you're coming back and you've got colleagues who you think would like to come and they haven't yet registered, bring them along as well. Email them tonight when you get home, or message them and tell them to come along as well. We will be picking up lots of these themes again: missions, AI, skills. All of those themes will be covered in our sessions tomorrow, and we have another lineup of fantastic speakers and fantastic sessions for you tomorrow. But thank you, everybody. Please do go outside and enjoy the reception. Take this opportunity to network, and hope to see some of you back here tomorrow. Thanks so much.